hi everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Tiffany Wang. I'm a partner at MS&AD Ventures. We're an early stage fund backed by Mitsui Sumitomo and Aeon Nisei Dowa, large Japanese conglomerate. Today we have three security professionals that are here to talk to you about protected enterprise. So can you guys please introduce yourselves?
Sure. I am Ankur Ahuja. I am a global CISO in Fairportal. Fairportal is one of the top 5 online travel agencies in the States. So if you have heard of cheapoair.com, onetravel.com, these are some of the brands. We've got 8 such brands in our group. So I've been there for almost 6 years now. So starting the security from brick and mortar to now around, got a pretty decent security team right now. So.
Great. Khalil Jackson. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with what they do. Prior to that, I spent some time at Bank of America and Morgan Stanley, and then also spent time in the Department of Defense working on cyber and national security matters.
Bryce Turby, VP of Information Security and Privacy at Signet Jewelers. We are largest diamond diamond jewelry retailer. We operate under Jared, Kay, Zales, Blue Nile, and many other brands. Been here about 2 years now. And prior to that, I was a consultant at Deloitte and all of Ralph Lauren.
Great, thank you. So Ankur, let's start with you. What has your security strategy, how has it changed pre versus post-COVID? I'm sure a lot of us are thinking about that.
It changed completely. Let me be upfront, right? So think of a situation how the business turns, especially in the travel industry, right? We were doing pretty good, pretty fine, growing at a very fast growth in 2019, and suddenly sales dipped down by 95% one fine day. Wow, we've grown. And same way, when we say that, okay, the sales have dipped down, you have to be very, very cost conservative. When you're saying that now you want everybody to work from home, give them laptops. We never had a laptop system in our contact centers, right? So where you got all the PII and PCI data, every human is being monitored by a CCTV camera, and now you're asking them to work from home. One machine was shared by 3 people. Now you wanted to give a machine to everyone else. So it was a complete change in strategy for us, right? So, for example, right? So we all use DLPs. Everybody is using it. We were also using it. We were doing employee monitoring. Yes. Suddenly, when people have been asked to work from home, all this fails. When you ask them to do this calling, process credit card data, and do whatever you want to do from their personal machines, things change. So we took a help where we came out with within a week we came out with our own solution, which is called Pilferage Management Solution, based on data. Can we come out with a pattern and tell that, okay, this agent of mine is doing something wrong? It's a complete change for us. We are no longer monitoring DLPs. No, that's only an investigative tool now. We are monitoring data. So if an agent, you called in a call center, you want to do a cancellation. If an agent who used to do 10 cancellations in a day is now doing 50 cancellations in a day, and he's taking a break of 5 minutes after each cancellation, it's a pattern of fraud. So we were detecting this pattern of frauds, and now that's the change. Now I no longer depend on that endpoint asset, right? I depend on the data which is being produced. So that way we built up, we changed the entire strategy on employee monitoring, fraud prevention. On the external threat standpoint as well, we completely changed our strategy from focusing more on VAPs. We do not focus. We do focus on VAPs. We have got VAPs. Every e-commerce and e-tail and e-retail companies have VAPs, but our focus is more proactively on writing down our own Python scripts and trying to block stuff by not depending on a third party to deliver something, right? So that's how our strategy have changed. Like today, if you see, the team size is same. However, the kind of team members and the team also have changed. Everybody knows every team has changed in the security space. So, but the sizing of the team is same, but the kind of expertise we bring in is more data-driven security folks, are more threat intel security folks than journalists. We don't, so we got some compliance to meet, but it's not that we are heavily compliance focused. We are heavily, so I lose like 1,200 tickets if our site is down for an hour, right? That's how it is. So I have to be proactive there. And things have changed in the last 3 years, the last 2 years, I'd say. After we've started recovering, I've seen the trajectory where it was topmost, we're doing very good, then we're suddenly going down, and now we are on the growing stage back.
Thank you. So let's build upon that. Khalil, you're in a slightly different sector. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in your sectors?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's a baseline set of technology that we all implement from a security standpoint that we all know everything from EDR to what we need to do on an endpoint, websites, so on and so forth. But one of the things that's been very difficult to handle is when you protect your employees and your customers and your stakeholders, you have to think about data and data protection. This is nothing new to all of you, but how do we govern and have the appropriate level of governance around data lineage and data protection? So I'll give you an example. So some of you in this room will probably had your data exposed in the OPM breach. Some of you had data exposed in the Marriott breach. How am I building a target package against you in order to not just phish you, but also to do other collection on you? And so nation state actors are certainly people that we know of, but obviously there is I like to call it a CMAAS, which is Cyber Mercenary as a Service, right? And some of us are familiar with some organizations that actually have services that they provide for mercenaries. And so this is the type of target package that people are building, and it's about that data lineage piece of it. So getting a better handle on data lineage and then addressing privacy. So privacy is one of these other elements that in the United States we have as many states as there are, that's as many privacy laws plus some, right? There is really no federal privacy law. The Fourth Amendment is still used for protection for people. That's obviously written a long time ago. So we have to think about how we govern privacy for our people while at the same time allowing innovation. So data protection, data lineage, and privacy. And last but not least, I think it's important that we think about how we interact when we work with our stakeholders. So that's been one of the big themes that we focus on in financial services, where whether they're institutions that we hold the data for, or whether they're people or individuals, no matter what jurisdiction they're in, we have to think about how we manage their privacy and how we address things, everything from Article 17 of GDPR, which is kind of the right to be forgotten.
Right.
Some of my colleagues here on the panel are in California, so you obviously are very familiar with CCPA. So those are a few of the things. Tiffany, thank you.
Great, thank you. So, another hot topic, supply chain, third-party, fourth-party risk. Ray, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, before I go there, I just want to come back to what you said about about the mercenaries service, because we have encountered several actors using these platforms. It sounds like the counterfeiters and the folks sort of went to the digital transformation, they moved to the cloud, and they're sort of using the social web quite effectively on that front. And the question, tying back to supply chain, the partners, I think there's, this is one, quantifying vendor risk, I think it's one topic that I don't think has really been fully successfully solved. I think it's it's a complex question. How do you sort of roll up vendor risk, vendor portfolio, the dependency on partners, and especially now in the context of resilience, you have a minor service and a public cloud service taking down a large swath, right, of platforms. So that is a topic that I think about quite a lot. We have made some progress there. I think we've sort of quantified this. We have a scoring mechanism like a lot of other folks, and we obviously have inventory of fourth parties. The public service clouds are there trying to correlate if this service goes down, what portfolio of my, kind of DR for third parties essentially. So the questions, we're trying to also understand the sort of the resiliency aspect of them, right? In terms of how, contractually speaking, right, if something goes wrong, how long, what's the parameters, and kind of how do we isolate ourselves. And we're also trying to build we're kind of rebuilding our integration, kind of middleware. How do we integrate with our partners, right? We're sort of building it from scratch in this concept, the concept of how do you build resilience if one of my partners is compromised and not. So that is certainly
what happens,
still complex, to work on it.
But what happens in our industry, which is more e-commerce, e-tail, e-retail, is that we can manage our third parties, but What about fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh,
Yeah.
and somebody, a small company with 3 people sitting in some third world country who's got access to your data, which you never know.
Right.
And now when you're dealing with, say, for example, for companies like ours, right, we do spend a lot on digital marketing. The thousands of affiliates who's sending us traffic, and they're collecting some information from us. And what they're doing with they're using that information to do another check, going to another fourth party, and then the fifth party, and somebody gets compromised there. The onus lies on you.
Yeah.
So a contract can control a third party. A contract, okay, you can do a subcontracting, but what about sub, where you end, right? There is no end to it. And I think that's the problem which we have been discussing for the last 5-6 years now. Since I have been a CISO in Fairportal, this has been an underlying problem, right? So, and I think for all CISOs, this has been a problem, and there's no solution to literally, other than doing some audits, which is humanly impossible to do. You can use technology behind it. There's no solution. There's no end to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's also important to make sure that, and I think we all try to do this, is we try and elevate the transparency around third and fourth party risk, to that senior level of the organization. So and I'll pick on banking because that's the sector I'm in. So if we have a trading environment, how am I providing the head of equity trading a view into their risk management, their vendor risk management?
Yeah.
Making them a stakeholder and a responsible and an accountable party to make decisions about which vendors they're deciding to develop software with, vendors that they're deciding to use for one reason or another. And then we take our cyber threat intelligence and we feed that in there. We provide that information to them on a regular basis so they understand the riskiness of a particular vendor or not. So I think that's really important. So when we elevate those types of programs, just like Insider Risk program, right? That's not an IT program.
Right.
That's a company program. Vendor management is a company program.
Yep.
So I think it's important that we kind of hold those business stakeholders accountable as well when it comes to making sure that these programs, and also we have to invest in technology that provides them that visualization.
Yep.
And so that's sometimes a long pole in the tent because it's not like a cool and sexy thing to do, but that's how we get ahead of the risk and how we address the fourth party considerations when it comes to contracting.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the holy grail, right? So
Yeah.
to manage vendor risk is like credit risk, right? Kind of how you roll up portfolios and you quantify it, right?
One of the examples, 2 weeks back, a very significant example of our industry, we found that the company whom we used to find the frauds, like credit card frauds, somebody is not using a fraudulent credit card on our website.
Yeah.
We found after 3 years of onboarding them that they are sharing the information which we are sharing with them to another company, and then we started talking to that company, and they are sending it to some other company. Now the PI is of my customer, right?
Yeah.
And they say it's a business use, right? I have a logical business use. I have to use that company to make sure that there are no fraudulent credit card used on my site. But how will you stop that? They said, okay, if you want to use us, I'll have to share it with somebody. Then if you wanted to share it, I'll have to share it with somebody else. There's no end to it. Sometimes you will have to, because of the business reasons, you'll have to accept that risk and move forward, or because nothing you can't do. You can control a bit, but not much.
So as security professionals, we know you can never have enough security, but how do you measure the ROI of your security investments?
Yeah. So I think one of them is, obviously people are going to say, oh, there needs to be some sort of metrics there. But I think it needs to be more than that. I heard the previous panel, some folks talking about that, is how do we make security and the behavior associated with how people are operating, how they're living their lives, certainly at the workplace, but outside the workplace.
Yeah.
How are we making that an opportunity to begin changing their behavior? And I think the way that you measure the ROI in security investments, if we decide to invest in a new EDR solution, or we invest in a WAF or something like that, being able to tie it back to how we can actually leverage that technology, leverage the security focus and the investment in it, and give that back to people to change kind of their behavior. That's a complicated task, and I'm sure if it was easy, everyone would be doing it already. But I think it's got to be certainly metrics-based, but that's a given. But it's also have to be behavioral-based. And so as you work with your various companies and sectors and industries all around the place, figure out what those metrics are in order that influence behavior, whether it's an employee survey, because there are things on the employee survey that influence behavior, whether it is how people are responding to security phishing tests and exams and things that you all do in your various environment, and then the reception that they have to significant security changes and controls, right? And as they become more amenable to those controls and those changes, I think that is, in my opinion, a measurement of ROI. Yeah.
It is like justifying your salary, right? So you basically have to justify why you've been hired to the leadership. You're basically justifying what is the ROI of your security investment. I believe, so what I have done, there are multiple solutions to it. What I have done is refer to what Gartner says, refer to what Forrester says, and then give that numbers and volume, numbers to the leadership, right? It is not the actual loss, but you can always refer back to potential loss. How many travel companies in the last 3 years have been compromised, and what is the loss they've given? That's the number, and I'm sure Gartners have done enough research on it. You put that numbers in and present to your leadership to justify what your ROI should look like, and what your budget should look like, probably, I'll say.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think, so you sort of brought in, there's two sides to ROI, right? The first one is kind of justifying to get the budget, right? For how do we get security budget for X? I'll sort of focus on something you touched on earlier. How do I spend that dollars, right? Where do I get the most return for investment on my security, security spend? And I think also the behavior and the usable, how to make security more usable, the controls are more usable and more automated. I think that is definitely a lens that we also use. In addition to the impact, right? I mean, users, what's surface area, the coverage, right? Like how many things we're impacting with this investment. Those definitely two lenses that we prioritize on.
And just to add one more thing, one of the things that I have seen work, if you have a cyber threat intelligence organization, everyone who is a leader within a business area has certain priority intelligence requirements or priority information requirements that protect their business. So what are they? If you've got 5 lines of businesses, what are the PIRs for each line of business?
Yeah.
What kind of information are they interested in? And so when that information becomes available, that is an opportunity for your technology organization to go to them and say, hey, listen, this is something that we saw, this is how it relates to your business, and this is the type of security investments that you've already been making in order to do that. And so that creates this idea that security is not just a partner, but security is actively protecting their business to move their franchise forward. And I think that's really important too to make sure you do.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as more and more technology is being built, we're starting to see some convergence in different features. How, as the CISO, how do you, work with other, leaders in your team, such as the CTOs and CIOs?
It's a good question, and I've been hearing this question for quite some time again. See, I believe, and it might be, some might not agree to this, but I believe CISO success comes only by support from CIO or CTO. If your CIO or CTO or other leaders are not supporting you in your initiatives, you cannot succeed. It's simple, right? So they are the factors behind your success. And another example I can give in our organization, 2 years back, after when we started recovering from the COVID times, and we said, okay, now we have to launch multiple products. Like the product queue is so long. We have to do a security check from security by design, product security to SAST, DAST, application scans without a human touch. So if I have to launch a product which starts writing a user story in the morning, by evening you should do a QA, you should do a security check, whatever you want to do, give a feedback to developer, and it should go live by evening. That means you can do at least 50 to 60 releases every day with the size of company we are, 300, 400 developers, total 3,000 people company. So how can we do this? Now, if you don't have a support from your CTO to drive this, you will never be able to do it. So that is an perfect example on how CTO and a CISO should collaborate. Now, what I do is I go for lunch every month. Once a month I go, whether we are remote or whatever. We try to do one face-to-face lunch with our CTO, with my CIO, so that we collaborate better. There is that's what I've been using it. So.
Yeah, we something very similar, right? Basically partner, but we are within IT, so we're already sort of report to CIO, so we're deeply integrated into the product teams. But outside products, like outside of technology, right, we have very strong partnerships with legal, right, sourcing, the business units, and I follow the same thing. I was remote, so I basically get the group together every month or so, and we connect on topics. And I try to give them value, to your point, like and tell them, like, hey, here's what's new, here's what's kind of what's affecting your space. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think never underestimate the most junior person in the organization. And I think when I think about, let's say our CTO organization, or I think about our software development team, how do we actually bring them as advocates for security as well, and doing this bottom-up approach? And so sometimes that may take a little bit longer. Most certainly, I have one-on-one coffees and catch-ups and stuff with a lot of my peers, but I also try and encourage my managers to go and spend time with their counterparts in other organizations.
Yeah.
And so as they work on things together, and I look for opportunities for them to work on things that don't have a temporal boundary or a restriction, like it needs to be done, tomorrow, then that actually helps create advocacy for each other.
Yeah.
And so when you create that advocacy for each other by having a program, like even a shadowing program, a mentoring program between the two organizations, I found that to be very helpful. And then even having one-on-ones with junior members of other organizations, clearing it through my peers, but hey, I'd love to meet with somebody on your team to understand kind of what they do and give them an opportunity to sit down with myself and provide me some insights on their viewpoint of security. So I think that also kind of gets us mixed in together, so that it is a brew of fabulousness.
Yeah, I love that point. I think it's a very, very important to actually go outside of your org.
And this also comes on whom do you report into. It's a big conversation where CISO should report into CIOs or legal or CROs or directly to CEOs. For example, I report into the same person who is Chief Product and Revenue Officer, where CIO also report and CTO also report, and I also report to the same person, so he's able to balance it. Whether you should report into legal, and if you report into legal, the challenge is that CIOs and CTOs will ignore you. If you report into CIO, your challenge is that you will have conflict of interest coming in. So that's another open question, and there is no answer to it, but it's all about how do you collaborate.
So last question. 30 seconds, advice or message to all the other security professionals in this room?
You want to? Okay.
Take
so, do lunches with your CIOs and CTOs. It will help. I'm telling you that that's one thing. And the second one is always spend at least 1 hour in a month to retrospect on what's next. The challenge is we are so overburdened with the fire we sit on as a CISOs that we don't get time to see what's next for our organization, what's next for us. Generally, that is another, suggestion I'll try to give to all the peer CISOs here.
I got 3 things: people, and people. Invest in your people, understand what they do. Make sure you invest in them even though they're not investing in the job, because you never know where they're going to land, and you never know what impression you might leave. And so good people with a good impression beget more good people with a good impression. And so it's all about people.
There's a second tagline to it: hire a stronger second line. So if your second line is strong, you're a successful CISO.
Yeah. Well, you also stole my thunder. You also stole my thunder, because I agree with you. I think success is going to be a connector, right? Especially InfoSec has, and privacy, right, has very sort of cross-divisional overview and constantly connecting people, different business unit, different components, and we also have a very strong mentorship program as well. Both, on both sides. So
Shows you the importance of it.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, it's all about the people. All right,
Yeah.
that's all the time we have today. Thank you.
Thank you.